and this is Sarah Tolosky. I am the CEO of Pharmacon Global, and for over 17 years, we've helped bring products to the market across Latin America through clinical research and market access. And today, as part of our series, we are doing a spotlight on Brazil as part of our Beyond Borders series. And we're going to share how this market is undergoing important changes. So I'm happy to share that I'm joined by 4 panelists who will help us understand what's new and what's to expect. So let me go ahead and start introducing our panelists, each bringing a very unique perspective on the evolving landscape in Brazil. So we have with us Rubens Grancha, partner and head of life sciences in the healthcare practice at LaFosse Advogados. Camille Rodriguez, who's the medical affairs director at Innovate Clinical Research. Lisa Pala Tavalaro at Avanzare, a local CRO that includes logistics. And Tatiana Tarlowski, compliance officer at Pharmacon Global. So, and then what the plan is, everybody's going to have about a 5-minute chat, 4 to 5 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A to try and stay on time. So thank you again for showing up and being part of this group. So Rubens, we'll start with you.
Sure. Thank you for the introduction and for the invitation. I'll try to be brief. It's not easy, but I'll try
Yeah.
to cover my point in a few minutes. So if you can move to the slide, that would be helpful. Yeah, so I try to concentrate my points here in this slide. And my goal here is to talk to you a little bit about these recent changes in the Brazilian law that created a much more predictable place for sponsors, investigators, and I mean, all the entire clinical research ecosystem with regard to the post-study supply. So first of all, I just wanted to give a quick intro about what happened in the past. So before 2024, we had in Brazil a scenario the clinical trial was governed by resolutions from the National Health Council, and these resolutions basically provided that the patient after the trial, as long as he or she was benefiting from the treatment, there was a right for indefinite supply of the drug. So after the trial, the patient was granted a post-study supply for life, as long as the treatment was effective. This was, of course, a big problem because it usually brought unpredictability in this court investments in Brazil. A clinical trial was somehow difficult in the country. We had all this consequence of success. So if the trial was successful, then the sponsor would have to continue to supply, and it was very hard to estimate costs related to the trials. So at the end of the day, many trials ended up not coming to Brazil because of this very specific duty. So in 2017, we started to have a change in this scenario with ultra rare uh, drugs or drugs for ultra rare diseases. In this specific case, the the National Health Council opened an exception to allow 5 years as a limitation for the post-study supply. So this was an important opening in our system. It proved that it was possible to have an ethical perspective in limiting post-study supply, at least in complex cases or for very specific publics. So this was actually a very important point to encourage a greater change in our regulation. So in 2024, we had Law 14874 enacted after more than 10 years of discussion in the Congress, and we were happy that this law created a much more modern environment for clinical trials, and one of the things that was changed was the duty to for post-study supply. So the law created a few situations in which supply could be discontinued. One of this. I mean, I will talk a little bit about later about these alternatives, but the point is that there was some battle over this. So after being approved by the Congress, there's limitations for the post-study supply. This provision was vetoed by the federal government, and only about a year later, this veto was overrode by the Congress. And current situation is that yes, we do have in Brazil now a much safer scenario, and we have a few situations in which this post-study supply can be limited, discontinued. So basically, what we have today at the law is that there are situations in which we can continue. So when the drug becomes available in the public health system, or if there is no longer a benefit to the participant, or in the case of an unfavorable risk-benefit analysis, or most importantly, after 5 years, the beginning of the commercialization of the drug in the country. So now we have this limitation, we have this expectation of limiting post-study supply to, some timing in the future, this 5 years after marketing of the drug in the country. And we are very, very hopeful that this will encourage more trials in the country, that this will create a much, that this will bring legal certainty for sponsors of clinical trials, and that, our country will benefit from this a lot by bringing innovative drugs to the country. Thank you.
Awesome. Rubens, this was a lot to pack in, especially for a lawyer.
Yeah.
So we appreciate so much your overview. And so now we're going to move to Camille, please. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, hello everyone. I'm Camille Rodrigues. I'm very pleased to be here to talk to you about this new moment in clinical research approvals in Brazil. So I have a career of more than 20 years in executive position in the pharmaceutical industry. And 10 years ago, I founded Innovati Health Service, where we provide service to small companies, startups, and partner CROs to bring clinical trials to Brazil, and also register medicines and medical devices in Anvisa. So the clinical research landscape is in Brazil is going through a moment of historic transformation, and the central focus of this evolution is, as Rubens told us, predictability. So allowing the country to become more attractive destination for clinical research and also health innovation. So the central pillar of this change is the implementation of our first law, as Ruben also shared with us. And so 2024 was a very special year for us here. And now we are like, things are really happening after this Congress approval in 2024. And so we are now working with a new system of law for Brazil. So what has changed in the regulatory approving clinical trials in Brazil? So changes in Anvisa are the engine of this new phase. Currently, Anvisa establishes a very bold deadline for this analysis, and this is already working. So one of the most significant advances is the tacit approval and also the importation process, that this is going to bring us something more deeply afterwards. So Anvisa now has a deadline of 90 business days to evaluate the clinical development dossier, the DCM as we call, including also the drug information and the clinical research protocol. And if there is an amendment later on, Anvisa has 30 business days to evaluate. So after these 90 business days, if Anvisa does not put in place any requirement for you to answer, Anvisa has to approve your project. So Anvisa is going to send you a tacit approval. She's going to send you a letter of approval. She can also later on come with additional information requests, but after 90 business days, you can start your project here in Brazil. Otherwise, if there's something that is really not good for Anvisa, she's gonna send you an information to hold on. Otherwise, 90 business days, she's gonna send you a letter saying that you can start your project. And the approval for importation, as Liz is gonna bring us, it will occur within 30 days after your initial submission. So you receive the import authorization before the study approval. This is a situation where Anvisa shares with you the risk. So you can bring your study medication into the country before the trial is even authorized. And furthermore, there is the concept of the reliance, which Anvisa has already embraced. So Anvisa is also taking into consideration analysis already performed by equivalent foreign regulatory authorities. So there is this initiative to help to expedite evaluation and move faster. So if you have approval for an equivalent foreign regulatory authority that Anvisa evaluates, it also helps to expedite your approval, and it gives you a security, we should say, that Anvisa can rely on this evaluation and expedite the process. So that's something very important to share with Anvisa once you send your project for approval. I think we can go to the next one, Lilian. And how are we doing regarding the ethical approval? I think that Anvisa is already settled, I could say, and now we are going through a lot regarding the ethical approval. So we had a major modification, the ethical approval in October last year. So that's all new for us. And the greatest gain for the research regarding ethical approval is the extension of the double review. So approval is now unique and issued by an ethics committee that we say it is accredited. So for high-risk research or for those protocols involving innovative drugs, that's what we are interested in, we do not have more this double review. And at this moment, we are, as I said, adapting to this new phase with major shift in ethical approval, but within 30 business days after your initial project evaluation begins, the ethics committee has 30 business days to give you your approval, and very different from more than 100 days that we had very recently. So I think, okay. So for studies focus also in health emergency and situations with ultra rare disease or rare disease, it could be even 15 business days. So we are going through this transition period right now in the ethics approval. There's a great challenge. Nowadays, we are also developing a new electronic platform to adapt to this moment. And we also need more accredited ethics committees to be working in the country. And our actual response time is 65 days. So we are not at the 30 days as it should be, but I think it will come in the future. And in conclusion, we are going through these changes in the system. There is a great positive expectation among professionals working in the clinical research, and we are certain that Brazil will soon occupy a prominent place among top countries to run your clinical development. So that's what I had to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Camille. I know it was a lot to cover as well. And, you know, with 30 to 50 billion dollars in the health market, it's an important place for people to be. And now there's a better reason to go there. So moving on, right with our timing, we're going to go on to Lisa Palatavalero, who's going to give her perspective in terms of specifically logistics and importation. Go for it.
Okay. Hello, team. Thanks for having me here today. It's a pleasure to be here to communicate about great news and why you should come to Brazil to run your clinical specific on the logistic part. So I'm
Vanessa
Lisa.
House is honestly.
Sorry,
Oh.
Tatiana, I think, thank you. I'm Lisa Palatavolaro. I've been working clinical trials since 2001. I'm a passionate in logistics, communication, connecting companies and people, and doing whatever I can do through Avanzare, my own CRO that was launched last year in July. I have experience working with CROs, biopharma company, logistics, not only Brazil, but also in Latin America and Asia. I hope tonight I can give you some more information about why you should come to Latin America, about why you should come to Brazil. What I do, I connect solutions with people trying to make the communication easier, supporting biotech, biopharma, medical device, and in vitro diagnosis companies entering Brazil and achieving their targets. Could be including patients, could be logistics, importation, regulatory, etc. My focus is to be efficient, compliant, scalable clinical trials in Brazil. So let's help our global sponsors from other countries to unlock the potential of Brazil for clinical trials. As you know, we do have the population you need, we have quality you need, investigators, companies, and if you connect with the right people, for sure you're going to have success in your clinical trial. So if you can move the slide, please. I'm going to be very fast talking about importation tonight and clinical trial logistics. I've been hearing that a lot of people that had in the past experience with importation in Brazil, they may say that it was a nightmare, it was super hard, took longer than expected, the cost was not very good. So right now, I would say since 2 or 3 years ago, lots of things has been changed in terms of the speed. As Camila said, now we have the new regulation allowing us to start the importation process after 30 days of submission of the project. So we don't need to wait anymore for the project to be approved, the CE to be issued to start performing importation that may be we may receive the product after 30 days of the submission or after the approval of trial. Right now, you can start the importation not only for the drug, the placebo, the equipment, the lab kits for you to include patients. You don't need to import all the quantities for the entire trial. You can import, I don't know, 20, 10%, 30% of the products that you're planning to bring to the country. You just need to put inside the warehouse. The warehouse cannot ship to the sites until the approval is granted by the MOH. So this means a great news in terms of you can start your trial, you can start screening your patients, you can offer them the lab kits in 24 days, 24 hours after the approval. So this is one of the biggest news in importation. Besides that, if you're planning to bring CAR T-cell, ultra-low temperatures, we also have specific codes in customs to make these kind of products be released faster. And one thing that I wanted to comment, maybe you had in the past a bad experience with the country, but if you rely on the good people communicating in advance, give us the documentation to review in advance, for sure everything's gonna be all right, because we are going to classify the product, give you the correct price estimations. We are going to make the product to arrive at the right time for the patient. Logistics, as you know, Brazil is super continental country. We have internal sites in the south of the country, in the southeast, up to the north. Sometimes one shipment from the southeast to the north may take 3 days to be transported, but we can coordinate the logistics. We can issue the domestic invoice called nota fiscal. We can pay the taxes in advance for you. So if you rely on the right people, we can make this work. Cost, time efficiency. We can support you the entire process. We can perform importation, acquire products locally. We can perform exportation after the end of the trial. We can send the products to destruction. Not sure if you know, but most of the clinical sites, they are not able to destroy by themselves the products. So we need to send to incineration companies and issue the certificate of analysis. And also having a local warehouse in Brazil, for sure you're gonna avoid risks in terms of relabeling. You can perform returns. You can perform revalidation of the product. So we can support you in the regulatory and also the fiscal procedures to make the products to arrive at the sites. In terms of a global comparison, if you're planning to run trials in other parts of the world, like China, Eastern Europe, Australia, of course, you are welcome, but Brazil is strategic for you. We do have the population you may need. We do have now better timelines, and our country is very, very competitive with high quality, high data quality, great investigators, great companies willing to get your trials and help you to perform your clinical development. So we are here to help you. And in the end of the session, after Tatiana, we are going to be here to answer your questions. Thank you.
Awesome, Lisa. I'm ready to go to Brazil tomorrow. So to finish up, we're going to have our compliance officer, Tatiana, talk a bit about clinical trial data governance. And we're only a couple minutes over, but we started late, so go for it.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Tatiana Tylaski, and I'm the compliance officer at Pharmakon Global. My work sits at the intersection of clinical research operations, data governance, and ethical infrastructure, particularly across Latin America. Today, I want to talk about something that I believe is one of the most important and often overlooked questions in clinical research. Who actually controls the data, and who benefits from it long term? Because in Latin America, we have incredible potential, strong investigators, diverse patient populations, and growing research ecosystems. But at the same time, we're operating within global systems that weren't designed for long-term regional value creation. So this talk is really about architecture, risk, and ultimately how we build systems that are not just efficient, but equitable and sustainable. I want to start with a very simple idea. Not all clinical data platforms are built the same, and that difference matters a lot, more than most people realize. On the left, we have what I would call the extractive centralized model. In this model, data is collected locally, but then leaves the country. Infrastructure is controlled by the sponsor or vendor. Secondary use of that data is often unclear. And most importantly, the long-term value is captured outside of the region. This is actually the default model today. Now compare that to a federated or sovereign model. Here, data stays within national borders. Local institutions host and control infrastructure. Access is governed explicitly, and long-term value, both economic and scientific, is retained locally. So, same trials, same patients, same data, but completely different outcomes. And this is where it becomes critical to ask better questions. Not just, does the platform work, but where is the data actually stored? Who holds the encryption keys? Can raw patient data be exported? Who owns the downstream analytics and IP? And is there a real local technical partner involved? Because if the answer to those questions are unclear, you are not entering a partnership, you are entering a dependency. And that distinction is going to define the future of clinical research in emerging markets. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.